Welcome to the first edition of SWAT4HCLS Talk. On January 15th and January 19th of 2021, we hosted the SWAT4HCLS virtual hackathon, where members of the SWAT4HCLS community met virtually to discuss various topics. One of the topics presented and pitched by Rianne Feiten from Maastricht, was one of the topics. In this stream, we will elaborate on this. Let me start by introducing Rianne Feiten. Rianne, welcome to the chat, and please introduce yourself.
I'm a senior researcher at Maastricht Clinic, and I work a lot in healthcare on FAIR data, specifically in federated learning on FAIR data.
Welcome. Next, we have Scott Marshall in the audience. Hi, Scott.
Hi.
Can you introduce yourself with a few words?
Yes, I'm one of the organizers of the SWAT4HCLS conference, and my latest background is in medical physics data. The last couple of years, I've stepped out of the bioinformatics industry or academia and into industry.
And then last but not least, we have Eric.
Hello. Yes, my name is Eric Perdomo, and I work at part-time at W3 and at a company called Genera Digital, and I have been involved in semantic web standards, primarily focused on use cases for healthcare and life sciences for the last as long as there's been a semantic web.
Okay, now I'm heading the floor to Rianne. Rianne, just start.
Okay, so I pitched this morning about the topic that you see on the screen, which is FAIR data and healthcare. The reason I wanted to pitch this at the SWAT4HCLS or SWAT4HCLS meeting today was that with our projects where we make healthcare data fair in the Netherlands, we experience a big bottleneck with two things. The first one is extracting data from data warehouses in hospitals, which means that every hospital stores their data in a different way, on a different site, sometimes even with a different language, which makes it very, very difficult to extract data to actually do something with it. And the second one is transforming this data into fair. So when you actually get it extracted, how do we then make it fair? Because a lot of hospitals have their own ways of structuring things or writing things down, which makes it very complicated. So my question was, how can we speed up these bottlenecks, or especially the second one, to make this process a lot more, a lot less invasive and make FAIR data therefore a lot more interesting to hospitals? So we had an interesting discussion about this in the morning. And these are some takeaways I got from this discussion. It was very interesting to see that some other countries actually have what I think are better arrangements than what we have in the Netherlands at the moment. So, for example, there was a project which was done by Eric, I believe, where they use standardized FHIR profiles to share data with the NHS. And they also used SOLID, which is social link data, where they actually had pods for specific patients or specific data sets that could be shared with different parties, which was interesting. And in Switzerland, they had a very interesting system as well, which was sort of government-led, where they have all hospitals in Switzerland that do an RDF dump of all their data, basically. And this data is then accessible to researchers at secured data centers. So that means that technologies like the personal health train, what we use a lot in research projects in the Netherlands, are actually not allowed because of privacy regulations. But instead, you can access this data as a researcher from a secure facility, which is interesting, I think, and that also works, of course. It's probably safer, maybe, too. Some interesting topics or concepts that I didn't really know about before this discussion was actually solid. So I'll be looking into that, which is what was used by Eric in his NHS project. Shape expressions I have heard before, but never really looked into it. As I understood, it can help standardize expectations from both sides. So you can tell the data owner, for example, how your knowledge graph or how the knowledge graph should be structured and what you expect. And I think it's also vice versa. Shape trees is also a very interesting concept that I didn't know about before, that you can use for interconnected sources of data. So I'm going to look into those in any case and see if we can apply that to our projects. So my thoughts as a result of this discussion, I know that in the Netherlands we have something called zorginformatiebouwstenen. This is a new concept that was introduced, I think, last year. As far as I know, it's not FHIR, but basically it's a standard to send around data, which is very similar to FHIR. But I think it's only for minimal data sets, so very minor things or very basic things. I'm not sure how compatible this is with FHIR and if they even considered FHIR, but I want to look into this and see if we can maybe use these zorginformatiebouwstenen and make it compatible with FHIR. Another one is that I still think, and this is something that was even reiterated after this discussion, is that I think we need incentives for hospitals to provide their data in a fair way, which is currently not the case. They see a lot of the hassle and the extra money that you need, but don't really see the benefits. And yeah, something like a full data dump is interesting, but it's interesting that, well, I didn't even write that down here, but one of the things I've always heard people say is don't do a full data dump of your data because that will just make it messy. Start by defining a very small research question and a project. So it's interesting that these sort of successful projects that were done, for example, in Switzerland, they actually do a full data dump. So I was wondering, would that even work in the Netherlands? And if so, how could we make that work? So I want to look into that, maybe do some literature research. I also know that we are working as a research group on FHIR profiles for radiotherapy, which is our specific field in healthcare. But I don't think there is much traction yet, as I have understood from my colleague that works on this. But I do think it's really important to make this work. And what I want to investigate, like I mentioned before, was that I want to look into shape expressions and shape trees and see how we can maybe make this compatible with things like federated learning in the personal health stream. So that's all I have for this discussion, but it was a very fruitful discussion. I'm very happy that everyone that joined in had a lot to say, and I'm thankful for that.
So thank you for a very nice overview of what you've been discussing. I seem to have missed a lot. Are there some points that Eric or Scott wants to add to?
I guess I could give a quick summary of FHIR and SOLID for people who are who don't know what they are.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So the project is to, and I wrote some notes because this is what I do in lieu of writing slides. So basically, we were providing an electronic health record interface with a portal based on FHIR medical records stored in solid pods. So what that means is that we're storing FHIR clinical data. FHIR is an interchange format that talks about observations and lab tests and conditions and diagnoses and all the stuff you would expect a doctor to think about, and provides a standard structure for them. And it has an RDF representation. It has JSON, XML, and RDF representations. And so that provides the data that we pass around and store on disk. And then SOLID is the resource hierarchy in which we store that stuff. And so SOLID is a personally controlled generic data storage that provides you with a resource hierarchy plus some additional stuff for strong typing over the resource hierarchy. So basically the combination of those two gives us the ability to plus a bunch of permissioning stuff that makes it so that people can share data that they want to share. So the combination of those two gives pretty much the architecture of FHIR gives provides FAIR because the data because FHIR is a resource-oriented architecture, and so you can't really help but have FAIR data. And then Solid provides the place, makes it findable, provides the storage and provides a commodity surface for you to store that data, as well as tools for sharing and controlling access and privacy control.
Thank you for that short update. Rihanna or Eric, are there plans? How do you see that this move forward? So this was the last day of the hackathon. We have the server. Do you think that any plans there? Can we use the platform to move forward on this discussion? And what are your thoughts on that?
I think I need to look into these different tools, because before this morning I didn't even know about them. So I think first step lies with me to figure out, what does this do? How do I use it? And how can I apply it to the projects that we have? And then if possible or where possible, and if they are interested, I would love to reconnect with Scott and Eric at some point to figure that out together.
Yes, I think Scott and I would like to use the opportunity to mention that we have the conference planned in December, and it would be really nice that this is a topic starter, that we have a very interesting session at SWAT4HCLS in December, specifically dedicated. And of course, we're looking forward for Rihanna then chair that session. But that would be really interesting. So I would really invite everybody who is watching this to come to our Discord server. The link is in the bottom of this conversation on this YouTube. And then what rest is to thank you for your time on this update, and well, hope to see you back on the SWAT4HCLS environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.